Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Conway from Village of Bartlett PD. He has almost 22 years experience in law enforcement. Really looking forward to this conversation. I know wellness is something that's a huge priority, not just for him organizationally, but in his personal life as well. So welcome to the show, Chief Conway.
Thank
Thank you for being
thank
here.
you, Paige. I really appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. So we were kind of laughing offline because you said that for fun, you just go and run 7 miles and like you were like so excited about it. And I was like, you and I are different people.
Yeah, I think you gotta, prepare yourself for the day. And I think, just getting off on the right foot, for me, it's always a run. And it's not always 7 miles, but I'm always usually starting it off with a run and a vigorous exercise before I, get to my shift. So, try to lead that way. And I think officers are starting to take notice and they notice that I'm here at 6 a.m. So yeah, they're I think they, are getting invigorated by that. They have an opportunity to work out as well on duty. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. Was fitness something that was always a part of your life, or was that something that you had to learn over time?
Yeah, so growing up, I played football for, better half of like 16 years, all through college. So I think, physical activity, working out was always something a part of my regiment, which was kind of the intrigue of going into law enforcement in general, just it's, a physical type of job. And I think, it's different every day. And then, getting into law enforcement, I think you learn rather quickly that, to maintain health, wellness, balance, you got to be in, as peak physical condition as you can, so I think whether it's, nutrition or, sleep or just physical activity, it all plays a benefit into, prolonging this job and actually enjoying it, to its fullest extent.
Do you draw a lot of parallels between sports and athleticism and the law enforcement profession?
100%. I think everything goes hand in hand, and it's not just one sport. It's all team activities, so anything that you do, I think, you can draw that correlation between that team mentality. And if read the books or, you're listening to podcasts, there are so many correlations that coincide between law enforcement and athletics, that it's a natural fit.
I agree. I'm doing a presentation and I was doing some research on my end because I always ask the question, do you agree with this statement? The statement is law enforcement are professional tactical athletes. And
Hmm.
usually everyone agrees. There's maybe
Yes.
some people where you kind of see like like, I don't know. And then, we can start to like give examples as to how those relate. But if we can agree with that statement, then we can say, okay, well, who are the greatest of all time? Let's look at the GOATs
Yeah.
athletically. And then what did they do to train? What did
Right.
they do to create longevity and quality of life within their profession? And so I've been doing a lot of deep dive research on this. And regardless of if you agree that LeBron or Tom Brady are, the best, they
Right.
are one of the best of all time, right? I know
Mhm.
LeBron and like Michael Jordan, everyone's always like
Yeah,
debating.
but I
But
mean, you can't negate anything LeBron has done. I mean, whether
right.
you like him or not, he's fantastic, an all-time scoring leader,
Yep.
right? And he's 41 now, or is he 40? So I
40.
mean, just
Yeah.
the longevity of his game to where his level is at, and Tom Brady is the same exact thing. How do you
100%.
maintain that? That absolutely pertains to our job.
A
How do
hundred
you
percent.
maintain that level of skill set, physically and mentally, to prolong your career? I love
Yeah.
the correlation. I love what you're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah. And you're exactly right. And the reason why I brought up those two people is because they were some of the oldest
right.
and still high performing in their fields. And so if you take a look at that and say, what did they do? Because I want to be the greatest of all time, or at least at the very least, I want to have quality of life the older
Yes.
I get, right? And be able
Right.
to perform at a high level, then we can start to take some of those things and we can start to implement them in
Yeah.
realistic ways that apply specifically to law enforcement. And, LeBron spends over $1 million a year on his
I was,
body. So, there's, but
I was going to say, if money wasn't an issue,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. But there are definitely things we can do.
Yeah, and you look at a lot of what they do, and you said some of these things, so I really appreciate you saying this, but they train mindset.
Mhm.
One of the things that Brady talks about all the time is mindset coaching. And then mobility is a huge piece of what they do. And it's not like heavyweight training, it's
Right.
mobility, it's body weight, maybe some banded things, and then like directional changes, right? And so if we can, and then rest and recovery. So both of them talk a lot about rest and recovery, sleep being a huge component of it.
Yes. Huge
So
component.
if we can take a look and say, okay, these guys made it a
Hmm.
decade longer than most people do, still
Right.
performing at a high level. And they're saying that they focus on sleep, rest and recovery, mobility, and mindset training. How can we take some of those things and apply it to law
Yes.
enforcement?
Exactly. And I think the more that, leaders within law enforcement kind of start thinking along those lines, they're really adding benefit, to the younger generation. And I think that is the difference between when, 22 years ago when I came into today's generation is you see that evolution of, adding the nutrition, officer wellness. Those things weren't being talked about 22 years ago. But as time goes on, you're wanting to be able to get to that retirement age and enjoy your retirement age. You've worked so hard to get to that point. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't last. That point shouldn't last 2 to 5 years. That should be, long, much more extended than that.
Yeah.
So I think, those things have to be embedded into your culture within your police department to really initiate that. And I love that you're thinking along those lines because the more that you reach, the more, your other departments and other leaders are going to be able to hear that and start implementing those things.
Thank you. Yeah. And one of the things you said that I wanted to kind of circle back to that I thought was really important is you said, hey, like I want to lead by example and I'm just going to show up for me and I'm going
Hmm.
to show, my team how I do it and how I'm prioritizing
Right.
myself in hopes that they'll be invigorated by it. I think that those were your words. And so
Yes.
I wrote down, in order to influence change, you have to be the change sometimes,
Yes.
and I had a specific experience with this. So in a past relationship, I was trying to get my partner to like eat healthier. I was like,
Hmm.
I want you to eat healthier, eat healthier, eat healthier. And they were like, no, no, no. Right. Like there was like this immediate resistance of like, I'm not going to do what you tell me. Just like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I was like, okay, fine. And so then I was like, well, I'm going to start eating healthier and I'm just going to like, do my own thing. And I'm going to start, doing my own grocery shopping or whatever it was. And by me just doing that, it automatically and like naturally made them want to follow lead, right? So
100%.
they saw
Yes.
that and they're like, "Oh, well now I want to do it." And so I
Right.
think sometimes and I've done this so many times in my life. That was just one example. Like there's been 100 of them, I'm sure, where I'm like, do this, do this, do this. Why aren't you doing this?
Right.
And not recognizing that, like, I just have to be the one to lead by example, and
Yes.
people will be inspired by that and will follow that. Not everybody, but people will want to follow your lead.
Yes, they will. And I think it's important, like I said, that they're seeing me here every day, 6 o'clock in the morning, regimented, and I'm doing my circuits and I'm doing my runs and I'm doing it. And they're like, man, he can do it at that stage of his career with everything that's going on. I can definitely do it at mine, and I got to keep up with that at that point because now that's the expectation, and you're not reducing that bar. So I think, as officers start picking up on that, they start looking at that and seeing it as a challenge. And they like that. I think they like to be known as that department's put together, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I think those are the types of things that this generation is striving for. So and I did it in my last position at the department that I was at. I can guarantee you no one's probably more regimented than I am, with what I eat, with what I put in. I know exactly what I put in. I know exactly what I put out. I know how many hours of sleep I need, to make sure I'm active and, capable throughout the day. And I think that's atypical for our profession. And I hope that, as you start talking about, I think you said, you call us tactical athletes. That's 100% what we are. So I'm hoping that is the new norm, and people stop dropping off donuts and they start maybe giving us, better food options. That would be my only request, is I don't see many people partaking in the fast food options as much as they had before.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you talked about being regimented
Hmm.
because One of the things, I'm sure you've heard this too throughout your career at some point or another, where there's always this like, I don't have time
Right.
or I don't feel like it, I'm not motivated. And I always tell people like it's not about motivation, it's about consistency and
Right.
dedication. And that's hard. And when you say regimented, you're like, this is just what I do.
It's now a
Yeah.
part of your day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I miss that part of my day, I'm going to have a bad day. And I think, what makes it easier is people utilize that as like, I don't have time as an excuse, right, Paige?
Mhm.
And when they use that as an excuse, I think it's up to us to afford them that opportunity. And for us, that was that fitness initiative that we allow our officers to work out on duty. So if they're having a hard time because, they're working a 12-hour shift and they have court and it's hard to break away from the family to get an hour and a half into a gym, it's important for us. We created that time and it's nothing more than 45 minutes on duty, of go work out, do something active. That's the expectation is be active. You can't just take your workout time and, sit around on your phone. It has to be active, whether it's yoga, meditation, weightlifting, running, walking, whatever that case is, it's physical activity. And it takes away that excuse of I don't have time. Well, you absolutely have time because out of your 12-hour day, we're allocating 45 minutes of it for you to go work out. So it just takes the excuse out of the equation.
Yeah, I like that a lot because I do think you start to see when you start to remove the objections or
Right.
the excuses, you start to see like where the real challenge lies, right? Because a lot of times it's not that. And so then when it's
Right.
like, okay, well, actually, I'm paying you to do this. Like I'm
Right.
giving you time and I'm paying you to do it. And then if they still don't do it, then that wasn't the real objection, right? It's
Exactly.
not that they didn't have time. It's maybe that they just didn't want to do it.
It's
And
just
then it
something more internally. Yeah.
yeah, so
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, well, then why do you not want to do it? So then there's more of that conversation of diving a little bit deeper and being like, okay, well, what's going to get you intrinsically motivated to do these
Yes.
things? So, yeah, it's interesting when you start to
And
pull away those things.
it's unique you brought that up. And I think as this is on the early stages, I got appointed in July of 25. And as we start moving through like just this fitness initiative and officer wellness as a whole, as far as the fitness initiative, we're looking into, having some of our officers, obtain their personal training certificates
Mhm.
so that if people are unaware of what to do or what they should be doing or how to properly work out, we can provide that assistance as well. And people are trained to be able to give that. We have certifications for everything, in law enforcement. I think it's appropriate that we have personal training certificates too, so that people know how to maintain a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think accountability is really helpful when you have someone being like, "Hey, let's
Yeah,
go." You
let's
know,
go.
some
Yep.
people need a little bit of hand holding, and I don't mean that in like a judgmental way. I personally really like to have a personal trainer. Like I have my own, or I like to
Yep.
go to group classes where like I pay $20 and I know that if I don't go, I'm losing my 20
Yeah.
bucks and I don't want
Yeah,
to
you're
lose my
throwing
20
away money.
bucks, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that whatever is going to get people to do the thing, I'm all for it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever that means. So, I do want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that you guys are doing, because I know that you've talked a little bit about, having more of a well-rounded, holistic approach. And
Mhm.
we talked a little bit earlier about this idea of mental training as a piece of the coach training, right? If you like dive into it. And one of the quotes that I think about all the time is that the most important training is between your ears. And I really like that because it's like mindset. How can we show up clear and effective mentally and physically? But I think sometimes we forget about the mental part of it. And I know that that's something that you guys are focusing on too. So can you talk a little bit about some of the other initiatives that you guys have?
Yeah, so I think we're one of the few, especially the mid-sized departments, that actually have an in-house clinician. And she provides essential, SISM training, and any critical incident scene management that we have, where she can debrief and have a critical incident debrief. She just did one today for us and our officers. And it's just a phenomenal resource. Beyond that, she also does our officer wellness check-ins, and Illinois had, along with the Safety Act, it's not mandated, but, we still have it there. And a number of our officers do take advantage of that. So it's, again, providing that resource in-house with someone that has been trusted. And this individual has been here for a very long time and has made valuable relationships with all of our employees. So when we have, whether it's personal or professional, crises, she's yet again just another resource. We've additionally partnered with the 100 Club of Illinois, and we're starting to get we're trying to get a peer support group up and running. That's still at the very early stages, but I think we got the right type of individuals that want to be that type of support person for our employees. And really beyond that, we're looking to get, a financial wellness, stability in here as well to talk about, talk about wills, to talk about, those types of things that they don't think about wills and trusts, and I think that is that the financial component of officer wellness is often forgotten about, and I think that is such an important piece for the new officers that are just starting off. And then the other officers that are, on the verge of retirement, and not just, on a financial standpoint, but the identity of what does that look like for me when I walk out these doors and I become a civilian again. I think it's important to have those types of conversations and again, have those types of resources for our officers, even while they're in the building and then, when they're not or when they're retired.
Yeah. I was participating in a roll call and they had someone in there who was a financial person and they were
Mhm.
just kind of, in partnership with that organization and kind of just running through some of the stuff that they do. And one of the officers, he had been on the job for a while and he was like, I have no idea at
Yeah.
all. He's like, I tried to chat GPT this stuff and just don't know, and I think that when you are still having those conversations where people are like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't
Right.
even know what to do, and I'm 15 years in, like, what do I
Yeah.
do? Being able to be as proactive as possible. And of course, like, starting today is better than starting tomorrow.
Yep.
But how early can we start to have those conversations, whether it be financial, mental, physical, and how can we be as proactive as possible to set everyone up for success?
I totally agree. And I think it is important that we are starting, and you're seeing that. I think the younger generation, they want that and they crave that knowledge, and I'm encouraged by that. And I think, the prior generations before we just kind of eased into, coming into the job, but this generation is just kind of they're taking over. They're not waiting their turn in line or anything along those lines. They're just kind of jumping in with both feet. And we have to be prepared to accommodate them, and I think that's the biggest difference is we're accommodating a generation. The generation is not accommodating the profession anymore, so I think that's the biggest difference. And I think that's probably on a leadership standpoint, the biggest difference that, I have faced is, coming into a new position.
Yeah. Can I ask you, just on a personal level, when it comes to wellness,
Hmm.
why is it something that's so important to you as
Yeah.
a leader?
Yeah. So in 2017, my family we lost our father-in-law to suicide. And that was, probably it was the most, tragic incident that we had faced. And it was hard, at that time because, there wasn't any system set up into place. And it was kind of, uncharted territory for something like that to happen. And I was out of work for a significant amount of time. My mother-in-law, my wife, it was, excruciating at that time. So, and I think, trying to pick up the pieces and trying to figure out what that looks like, upon return, and coming in, I really I don't want my officers to question that, and I don't want there to be, stuck, just kind of dealing with those emotions because I think when I was in that position, I guess I never really got to express what I was going through at that point, is because you're just trying to manage what's going on within your own family. My daughter was 3 or 4 at that time, and my wife's going through that. And, with my mother-in-law and her sister, it's hard to even, I guess, express your own emotions, and I think I did have a group of friends that, had been through similar circumstances within the police department. those were the guys that were really, hands-on with me, but I think as a department, having those resources or just having those, opportunities to, make sure I'm okay, and that when I'm ready to return, it's safe, right? I don't want there to be any question marks for any of our officers. I want our officers to know that they have the support, they have the backing of their staff and every employee here at the Bartlett Police Department. And it really is important for me that again, those officers know that you're not alone. And, again, like we face enough going on professionally. And I think where we really can get caught is when it starts blending personally, and those tragedies happen, back to back, and I just want those officers to know that it's better to be able to handle these situations, with some sort of idea of what you're going to face, what you're going to go through, without questioning, what's happening inside the police department.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And um, do you think that after going through that experience and maybe not feeling like you really knew where to turn or what to do, and you had those people who showed up for you and said, hey, like, you're not alone, we went through some of these
Yeah,
things too, and do you think that that really showed you the power of being able to have conversations with people and be vulnerable and share your story so that people know that they're not alone? Because I think that what we tend to do is kind of, shove those things
touched
down. And,
on.
we
Yeah,
talked about like
yeah.
the tough guy facade of like nothing, hurts me. Do you think that that was a moment that like really opened your eyes as a leader of like, hey, we have to talk about
100%.
this stuff?
And I think, Paige, what I got from it is just asking those penetrating questions. We're so good investigating things and like kind of asking, those difficult questions when it's a scene, or when it's a tough interview, whatever that case may be. We're so good at that. And what we don't do that with our own people. And what that really, I think got to me was that we notice different when people are acting different, when they're acting different, and it's really going to them one on one and being like, hey, are you okay? What's going on, and having those tough conversations with them. Because I think once you do that, especially on a leadership standpoint, they're recognizing that you see them being different. And now they're willing to express to you what's going on in their life. And now you can help them. Now you can help them because you have shared experiences probably, or if they're not shared, they're at least going to be in line with one another, and you can kind of get on the same, common ground as them and help them out. And I think just the mere fact that you're asking about how they are or what's going on is enough to know that they feel valued.
Yeah. Why do you think that there's a fear of asking those questions when you are so well trained at doing that in your profession? Why do you think, from a peer to peer perspective, that there's fear in asking those questions?
I think there's always a fear that people are, oh, they're going to take my badge away. It's going to, I'm going to lose my weapon or something along those lines, or they're going to psych me out or something like that. But I think that that's a misconception, and I think to know that, again, like I share my story to show that there is vulnerability on a leadership standpoint. As the chief of police, I am vulnerable. I have been in that place, and as much as it kind of tore my family down, we built ourselves back up. And I think the best way to kind of put it is, you've heard the man in the hole, right? Have you heard about the man in the hole?
I don't know if I have.
So it's a unique story, and it was told to me during that time that there was a man who was walking down the street and he falls into a hole. A doctor comes by. And the man looks up and he says, hey, doc, I fell in this hole. Can you help me out? The doctor writes out a prescription, throws down the prescription, and then he walks away. Time goes on. The man looks up and he sees a priest walking by and he says, hey, father, I fell into the hole. Can you help me out? The father bends down. He says a couple prayers and he moves on. Time goes on. The man looks up and he sees a friend. He says, hey, friend, can you come help me? I fell in this hole. The friend jumps in and the man looks at him. What the heck are you doing? Now we're both in this hole. The friend looks at him and says, I know. I've been in here before and I know the way out. And I
Mm,
think that's a good story to say, like, if we are family, if we are friends, and we really are, we spend more time together in the police department than we spend with our own families. We should be asking those questions, and we should be helping each other out of these holes, not holding each other down. So
Yeah.
anytime I get to say that story, I think that's what my friends did for me is they basically told me, I've been in here before. Don't fall into the same stuff that I did or that or that could have to happen. Let me show you the positive way out. And I think, if we, as long as we keep those lines of thinking, I think we're in a good place.
I love that story. I've never heard that before, and I'm stealing it. So
That's awesome.
thank you
Good.
for
I'm glad
that.
you stole that one. I'd love
Yeah,
to take credit for it. I don't know where they got it, but I'll never forget it.
it's great. That's
Hmm.
perfect. And one of the conversations that I've been hearing a lot, I think we start to see waves and trends of conversation happen. And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is this conversation about how everyone within the organization treats each other, and how, and this is not my words, but how you guys can maybe be the meanest to each other, right? It's like
For
this like
sure.
peer to peer like judgment, and so when you and I talked offline, one of the things, and I wrote it down, and I wrote, I always laugh at my notes because I wrote like love this, like yay, but you said like help each other, like better one another, like
Yeah.
show up for each other in a loving, you didn't say this, but this is what I took away from it, like in a loving way, as a
Right.
team, like how can you lift each other up? And I think that's really in line with what you just said. But I remember you saying that offline of like, how do we create a culture or an environment where you guys are helping each other out and not judging each other or
Yeah.
talking bad about one another, and you see each other as friends? Maybe not family. I know everyone says family. Maybe
No,
it's not that way, but like, how do
it's a
you?
great point. And I
Yeah,
think, when I originally started here in Bartlett, I told them it's okay to fail. And my expectation is that we are going to fail. And that is known to us now. And it's not something we should all be afraid of. It should be something that we welcome. And us as leaders, it's not holding them down or back because of that failure. It's building them back up and getting them to a point where they're now successful. And that is not no longer a blind spot. That's a strength. And I think that culture, as as police officers like to put it, I think we have this persona of being type A personalities, and I think that's so far off because I think legit type A personalities aren't afraid to fail, and they're willing to put themselves out there, and they're willing to kind of get back up after being knocked down. But I think law enforcement as a whole, they are afraid of being knocked down, and they are afraid of failure. So I think, we have to get over that and say, like, we're breeding a culture that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be the greatest at something. But where we want to get to is to this point past that failure. And I think that's unique because people aren't used to hearing that, hey, if you fail, it's okay. We're going to find a way to pick you back up and
yeah.
show you how to be successful.
Well, I think if we link this back to what we were talking about before and like the
Sports.
sports,
Yep.
analogy, but I think about this all the time. It's like some of the best teams each season don't necessarily have all of the best top players. They just
Uh-huh.
play really well together as a team. They complement each other, right? Of course, they're all excellent at what they do. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. But it's not always like sometimes you'll see that you'll get a bunch of star players together and
They don't
they're,
meant.
they're
Yeah, they
not
don't.
they're
Yeah.
not winning the game, and so
Right.
I think about this a
Much.
lot. Like look, let's think about a football team. Do you think that everyone on that football team are absolutely best friends with each other? Or do you think that like maybe some people don't really care for each other, and it's
Yeah.
humans, right? There's personalities. However, when they are out, when they are working and they are together, they are training together, they're out on the
Right.
field, they are coming together as a team and they are supporting each other so that they can win the game. Like that's
Yep.
like they have a bigger mission of working together and supporting each other and lifting each other up. And in a team mentality, you are as weak as you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And
Yep.
so, how can you continue to develop each other and cheer each other on and support each other? And yes, know that sometimes there's going to be a fumble.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's going to be an interception. Sometimes, you're not going to catch the ball. And those are those failures, right? There's going to be
Right.
things where like you don't succeed or you don't win the game. And how can you then go back and run tape? And how can you look at the
Exactly.
opportunities for growth so that you guys can be better moving forward? And I think that the only way that anyone in a team environment is going to succeed is if you come together as a team. Like there's
Right.
no way that it's going to
Yeah.
work if everyone's fighting each other.
Exactly. And you're going to have so many different personalities, Paige. I mean, everybody's different and with different walks of life. And to go back to the sports, analogy, I watch the Last Dance every single year, and without failure. If you've never seen it, it's about the last season of the Chicago Bulls, right? And when Dennis Rodman was introduced into the Bulls, Michael Jordan was basically like, I don't care what this guy looks like. I don't care, what he says. I don't care what he looks like. Is this guy going to help me win? Absolutely. And I think that's the attitude that we need to encourage. Like, regardless of, who, is coming into this team, they are a part of that team and they provide a unique talent that's going to assist your team and, into victory. And, again, like we face a lot of the similar, things that sports do, so if you're talking like a high risk situation, you don't need everybody to be a super tactical officer. You might need somebody to be a negotiator. You might need somebody to be that investigative mindset thinking after the fact as far as evidence collection or what have you. So I think you need a well-rounded team to really, be successful as these, major sports teams do that win championships.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that you see in these team environments is one, a crazy level of ownership.
Right.
Like when something doesn't go right, you see, and they're like, it's on me. And,
Right.
and they're like, recognizing like, okay, I need to do better. And that was my fault, like my bad. But also I think, being able to continue to learn, of course, there's going to be so many egos, like anywhere you go, right? But think about it. If you have 12 guys that are making millions of dollars. They were the best in their high school or college sports. They're walking on like, I'm the man. Yes, there's egos, but they're still willing to learn from their mistakes, have those conversations, and try to strive to be better. And I think that if we can apply that to ourselves, like I have to think about that a lot. It's like, am I a forever learner? Like, am I
Right.
teachable? Can I take feedback? Can I take criticism? Can I take self accountability when I do mess up and something doesn't go right?
Right.
And I think that we have to do that for ourselves for the betterment of the team, but then we
Yep.
also have to be willing to show up for the team. And what does that look like? So I love this conversation. I get really
This
nerdy
is
about
great.
it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's perfect.
My final question for you, and then I'll let you take the floor if I miss anything. But
Sure.
for the younger generation, what words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known when you were first coming into this profession, or something that has helped you along the way that you want to pass on to them?
Yeah, I think for me it'd be slow down. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think this job has so much to offer you. And I think, the younger generation really needs to take time to learn the skills, and then really start thinking whether or not, specialties and supervision and all those other things. And I think again, like, if I were to talk to my younger self, I would tell myself, just take your time and really enjoy this career. Really make sure you get to do everything you want to do because this job is worth it. And it's honorable. It's everything that everyone, had ever said to me. But I think there's so much there that, I will look back at my career and be like, man, I really wish I got to do this.
Mm.
So I would really encourage younger officers just to breathe and do everything you want to do before really taking advanced steps into, like I said, specialty assignments or supervision.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I'm smiling because I didn't do that when I was younger. And
Neither did
I
I.
agree with you. I wish I
Yeah.
would have slowed down. And I think sometimes we don't recognize too, like the most fun that we have or like the best parts of our life, we don't realize until they're gone.
They're
You
gone. They're
know,
done. Yep.
and
Yep.
I've done a lot of that where I'm like, I just want to advance, I want to advance, I want to advance. And I look back, I'm like, man, it was really fun to like not be in a leadership position and to
Yes.
be,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
I was working like, I was working narcotics with my best friend with like 2, 3 years on. That was by far the time of my life, and again, like I would have slowed it down, took it in a little longer and really kind of maybe perfected some other skill sets. I think, yeah, I think if that were the case, then I'm certainly not dissatisfied with my career. It's just, yeah, I think this job just has so much to offer you that you really can, expand yourself even more if you just take your time.
yeah, no, I agree. And I appreciate your time so much. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you want to add before we
No, I
wrap?
think we went the sports route was perfect, and I think that you tied a lot in with that. And I really do appreciate it, Paige. Thank you.
Cool. No, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Absolutely.